Hello and welcome to the Internal Momentum podcast. Today I have a guest who I connected with 15 years ago. I first saw him at a number of speaking events. He was one of the guests back when I was really getting into marketing, and I saw him back then and was very impressed, and I've just been watching his journey over the last few years. So it was great to connect. We've got JD on the podcast from the Institute of Wow. Welcome, JD.
G'day, Ben. Thank you very much for that nice intro. And I'm going to make sure I've got a recording of that so I can play it to my wife so that she knows at least someone was impressed with me.
All right. Well, for those of you who have never heard about you or know who you are, how would you describe what you do?
Okay. Look, my name is John Dwyer, but I get JD, the initials. So I get lots of other names, but we won't go through that. And my business, the Institute of Wow.com, as that name would, as that title of the business would infer, it's all about wow factor marketing. And I got into it 1,000 years ago because I could see that there was a gap in the market for small to medium-sized business consulting. I was in the corporate world and I was doing, marketing campaigns, direct response marketing campaigns for the McDonald's and the News Limited newspapers for Rupert Murdoch. I do all the scratch bingos and stuff like that. And KFC and 7-Eleven and Madura Tea and all of these big businesses. And it was good fun. There's no question about that. But I said to my wife about 12 years ago, I said, look, we're not getting any younger. Why don't we actually grab this direct response marketing stuff, which is a little unique compared to general marketing, and sell it to small businesses. So that's what we've done for the last, 10, 11, 12 years. And direct response marketing, as again, that name infers, is all about advertising on Facebook today and getting a direct response, be it good or bad.
Yeah, I've definitely seen that shift change. And I remember being exposed to direct response years ago. And at the time, it's like revolutionary to me because up till then, it was all the brand advertising. And like pretty much I was doing a lot of printing back then. And the general thing is make the logo bigger. They just, if we just put the logo, put it everywhere, make it bigger. And that was they thought if we just put our logo and what we do and a phone number, people will call us. And it doesn't quite work that way, does it, Jay?
No. I keep on saying to people, be careful of vanity metrics because you can put your face on the side of a bus or the back of a taxi or on a freeway billboard. But when you get home that night and you can say to the kids, oh, guess what? We got 180 likes today. The kids are likely to say, thank you, Daddy, but there's no food on the table. So you just got to be very careful with that brand building. I mean, the big boys can do it. McDonald's can sponsor the Olympics and, Nestles and Cadbury and Coca-Cola, they can sponsor football teams and cricket teams and baseball teams. But if you don't fall into that league, then, you want to go down the direct response marketing path. It doesn't mean to say that you need to forgo building your brand. Of course, you build your brand at the same time. And, pretty much all of the clients that we've had over the years, maybe there's an exception of a few of them that are just wham, bam, thank you, ma'am. They want to get in and scoop up all the money and go off again. But most of them, we help build their brand at the same time as we sell stuff. And the traditional marketing agency, which are all digital agencies these days, but the traditional marketing agency will say to you, look, we'll help people fall in love with your brand so that they'll taste your product. We flip that. We get them to taste your product so they'll fall in love with your brand.
Yeah. Well, I often will look at branding as the cream on top. You never do marketing for the branding. You do the marketing for the leads, and then the branding is the offshoot of that. It's sort of the residual that comes along with just being in front of people.
Yeah, I was on an interview last week with someone and they said, how important is your logo? I said, well, if you're Nike or Uber or Coca-Cola or Kellogg's, it's very important, but they're 1 in a million, So if you're paying a graphic artist, who these days is called ChatGPT, but if you're paying your graphic artist a bucket load of money for a logo, then stop. Because, if I asked you, could you draw the Woolworths logo? And I've done this. When I'm on stage in front of 50 or 100 businesses, I'll say, who can draw the Woolworths logo? And the pathetic attempts at it, just ridiculous, of course. They know it's a W, but it's just awful. And then I bring the logo up on the screen. And I say, well, none of you got close to it, but who in the room of 100 business owners can tell me the Woolworths tagline? And, of course, 100% knows the fresh food people. And I came from having been the national marketing guy for Woolworths, so I didn't come up with the fresh food people, but I was there throughout that time. And so I know how important the tagline is. And I keep on saying, if you're going to give emphasis to anything on a branding basis, don't give emphasis to your logo, because the chances of you being Pepsi, it's probably 1,000,000 to 1. What you should do is give reference and really high focus on your tagline. We are the fresh food people. And if you're a car mechanic, we fix cars fast, or whatever it may be. But make sure you concentrate on the tagline, not the damn logo.
Yeah, well, often with logos, I have two pieces of advice for people. It's your logo just needs to meet the professional standards. So it doesn't look like you did it in Word.
Yeah.
As long as it meets that, it looks like it was done by a graphic designer. That's kind of check that box. And the other thing is I think as a business owner, you need to like your logo because you need to be proud of it in the sense of you're not ashamed of sending people to your website or ashamed to
Yeah.
put that thing in front of people. If it meets those criteria, it's usually good enough for most small businesses.
But I mean, for any business outside of the big guys, I mean, we all know that we buy Toyota because it's Toyota and we buy Kellogg's because it's good. They've built up a brand over 50 years. We understand that. But if you're a startup or even if you've been going for 5 or 10 or 15 years and you think people are going to recognize your logo, most of the time you're on drugs, okay, because they're not recognizing your logo. So yeah, I agree with you, Ben. Be happy with it yourself. But if you think it's going to be as vital as the Apple logo, then yeah, you're on serious drugs.
Yeah, well, I've heard of it often called productive procrastination, where people go and redesign their brand and redesign their logo and redesign everything, and it's just like, that they think it's working on the business, but it's
Yeah.
really just more time doing stuff that's not really going to move the needle. With the Institute of Wow, I actually really love the whole concept of it and what you've done and you've built there. And also, you've got this history of working with these big campaigns for these big brands. But I'd love to go back a little bit further. I'd love to sort of know what you were like sort of early on, which really got you into working with those big brands. How did it all start for you?
Yeah, so we're going way back into the 1800s now. Yeah, so it's yeah. Look, when I left school, I was pretty good at artwork, and although there was no such thing as AI in those days, I could see that the computers were just around the corner. And I'm not that ancient; computers were around, but I could see that being an artist was probably not long term. And so I thought, well, where can I use the creative skills that I thought I had? And I thought, advertising. So I went to university and I did the usual advertising marketing course and walked out with a certificate, none of which has been worth anything to me ever since, of course, because you're being taught by people at university who have never actually had a job, but they're just teachers. But anyway, I had the bit of paper that I could put on the wall for a while. And in my early 20s, yeah, I was lucky enough to get a job with Grace Brothers. And I know you're on the west side of Australia, but I don't know whether Grace Brothers were there. It's now Myer, okay, because Myer bought out Grace Brothers. But I got a job with them in their advertising department, just as one of the juniors. And it was really interesting. I learnt direct response marketing probably more there than anywhere because, the retailers, they're pretty cluey. I mean, they will make sure that if they're going to get rid of dead stock, they'll not do it every day of the week, unless they're Kmart. They won't drop their pants every day of the week. They'll have a half-year sale and then they'll have a Boxing Day sale. That gets rid of all the crap in their warehouse. But right throughout the year, you'll see them doing things whereby it's only available this weekend. Harvey Norman is expert at it. Harvey Norman has a, buy by a certain deadline every single weekend. And you think to yourself, well, is that going to wear thin? Do people just know that it's all? No, because if you're looking for a washing machine this weekend, you're probably not looking for a washing machine next weekend. But if you are this weekend, of course, and he's got a sale on that's only available until 5 o'clock on Sunday, you go, oh, I better get in there. And so this whole deadline ethic and value add stuff became part of my DNA. And I thought, wow, this is good. And so, yeah, silly me, I left the job and set up my own business. I think we'd only just got married at the time, so my wife was real pleased about that. And yeah, we went through that roller coaster in the first, 2 or 3 or 4 years of, making money one month and not the next month. But eventually worked out just how this direct response stuff works. And really, there's 5 components to it, and whoever's watching this might even like to take them down if they wanted to, but the 5 components are you highlight someone's problem, e.g. sort of the weight loss program might be, are you overweight? Number 2, you aggravate that problem. And so if it was a weight loss company, then it would be, well, summer's around the corner. Do you want to look good in a swimsuit? Number 3, you provide the solution, which is, your weight loss program or whatever it might be. Number 4, you provide proof, which generally speaking is testimonials. And then number 5, a strong CTA, call to action, which normally is, get in by 5 o'clock and you'll get a certain bonus. And if you really want to drill that down to 2 words, it's problem, solution. And the dirty version of that is, the Kerry-Ann commercials on Channel 10 of a morning. That's basically the George Foreman barbecue. Are you wanting to eat better and want to eat meat more often, enjoy actually cooking? Well, why don't you get the George Foreman barbecue? But that's the down and dirty sort of infomercial versions of it. But, I use direct response marketing to help open the Hilton Hotel here on the Gold Coast where I live. So it can be done very classy. It's just that you've got to stick to that formula of problem solution.
Yeah. Well, I actually heard that, or a variation of that, with the problem, aggravate, solution, proof, call to action. I offer scarcity is how I would say the call to action. But I've sort of built that into how we build our websites, and it's part of the general structure typically when we build it. But the big thing on top of that I've found that is often missing with a lot of businesses is clarity. And it's about making things simple and clear.
Yeah,
And that's like, is that something that you've seen working with businesses where they try to overcomplicate things?
absolutely. Absolutely. We've got an incredible sales stimulant, which is a holiday incentive. You've probably seen me, pushing it all the time. And how that came about is that some years ago, I had a banking client here in Australia called the Greater Building Society, and I know you've heard this story, Ben, but nonetheless, so I came up with a concept for them because they were what probably most of your clients and certainly most of my clients are. They were a challenger brand. The Greater Building Society is the 250th biggest business in Australia, but compared to the Commonwealth Bank or Westpac, the minnows. And they didn't know what Challenger brand meant. And I said, well, Challenger brand was Virgin when they came to Australia to really, upset Qantas and tell people how they were cheaper and they were better. Their tagline from Richard Branson when they first came out, whatever it was, 30 years ago, was keep the air fair. And they spelled fair, F-A-I-R. And so immediately, without saying it, we said, oh, Qantas have been ripping us off, for 20 or 30 years, keep the air fair. So it was a challenger brand, and challenger brands normally are cheeky. They're very cheeky.
Yeah.
And so at the Greater Building Society, I said, look, you're a big enough business, but you're not as big as the Combank. So why don't we do this? Instead of giving away the 1% honeymoon rate to attract people to get a home loan, because that's what every bank does, why don't you give that 1% honeymoon rate to a travel company that I've been doing some infomercials for, who can give you a $10,000 holiday for 5? And what you do is you say, look, get a home loan from the Greater or swap across from the Westpac and bring your home loan across to us. And guess what? We will give you a free holiday. And they took an extra $15 billion, not million, $billion worth of home loans in the first 3 years. And this idiot who you're talking to didn't do a door deal. I just had a monthly consultancy fee, so I'm a complete moron. And then about 3 years into it, I drum roll because you've heard me show off about this before, but I got Jerry Seinfeld to do their advertising. So it wasn't easy. It took 6 months to get to him. And eventually when I did get to him through his manager, George Shapiro, money was not any interest to him because he's got more money than God, but he just thought the idea was good. Basically take the piss out of banks and tell them to come across to the Building Society and get a free vacation. And so when Seinfeld got involved, it went to another level completely. And as a result of that campaign being well known, because obviously, Jerry Seinfeld doesn't do too many of them, I had a travel company contact me and they said, oh, listen, we've seen your Seinfeld campaign. Do you want to join forces with us? And create a Happy Meal toy, as in a free holiday, that businesses can use to give away to their customers when they buy a refrigerator or get lawn mowing services or whatever it might be. And I said, hallelujah, absolutely. I've just come off the back end of, the Seinfeld thing. And they said, good. So we put this together a few years back. And as it turns out, what we do is we give these vouchers to businesses for less than $50. They're worth like $1,000 because it's 3 to 7 nights accommodation in Bali and Perth and Melbourne and Sydney and Gold Coast and Cairns and all sorts of places. And what happens is that they use this as a Happy Meal toy. And the reason I've gone down that path is because the easiest way to distinguish yourself from any of your competitors is to, of course, drop price. You don't want to do that because they're going to beat you in 5 minutes. I mean, there's no exclusivity to price discounting. And so the next easiest thing to do, and it's what McDonald's do, is give them a Happy Meal toy. So instead of actually being the cheapest hamburger in town, they just say, look, we're going to put a Kellogg's style toy in our Happy Meals. And they've done that for 44 years and it just doesn't stop. And so therefore what we say to businesses, whether it's our holiday, voucher or whether it happens to be, a dining voucher or petrol voucher or whatever it might be, movie voucher, make sure you don't price discount, give them a Happy Meal toy and that'll take their eyes off the price.
I generally find if you can make people money, if you can give them time back, those are big motivators. But the minute you start playing with something where the price matters, it's just a game to the bottom. So anything that can give you that differentiator makes such a difference.
I mean, why would you do it? I mean, the thing is that we've got businesses that do the holiday thing, okay, and they say, look, buy my lawn mowing services for 2 months and I'll give you a free holiday. If they're getting the holiday for $50 and they're giving something away that's worth $1,000, then that's why it's red hot. You see, the reason the McDonald's thing works, I know the people who came up with the Happy Meal toy thing, they're in their late 70s now, and they live in Trump Tower. They've made a few dollars out of it. They're a Sydney couple. They said they make the toys in China, which they had a share in the Chinese toy factory, but they make the toys for 22 cents. Sorry, McDonald's buy the toys for 22 cents, but to any parent or grandparent, that toy looks like a $5 Kmart toy. So it's a low cost but a high perceived value. That's when your Happy Meal toy works. But if you give them a $50 dining voucher, they know that you've just valued them at $50. If you give them 2 tickets to the movie, they know you value them at $50. Whereas you give them something like this that's worth $1,000, they don't know you've only paid $50 for it. And there's not too many value adds that are appealing to all demographics. It doesn't matter whether you're 20 or 120, you want to go on a holiday. But if I walked into a menswear store to buy a sports jacket and they gave me a skateboard, I'd just say, mate, you missed the mark. I'm not going to. So you've got to make sure that, what Mal Emery, you would know, Mal, what Mal
Yeah.
Emery used to say all the time, and that is message to market match. If you're going to give away a Happy Meal toy, make sure it's a good message to market match. So don't give wrinkle cream to a woman who's 25. Give it to someone who might be in their 50s or 60s, So it's
Yeah.
got to be a good message to market match. And
Well,
that's where people fall over from time to time. They actually come up with a Happy Meal toy, or not many do, but those who do, and it's the wrong toy for that market.
yeah. Well, with the bold ideas that you've got, like, so the idea of getting Jerry Seinfeld, did that come from you? Was that a discussion as a group? Like, how does that even come about?
Yeah, no, yeah, it sort of came from me. And how it came about was that we'd been running the Get a Home Loan, Get a Free Holiday promotion for 3 years, and it was just nuts. And with a building society or credit union, their database, their target audience tends to be working class, so they're going to be they're going to be electricians or plumbers or builders, mostly. If you are wearing a coat or suit, then you get your home loan from a bank, and you get treated really badly. They treat you like a number, not a person. But
Mm.
you're wearing a suit, so therefore I'm going to deal with a bank. I'm not going to deal with a credit union or building society. So I said to them, okay, well, after 3 years, we'd scooped up, like, when you're doing billions and billions of dollars worth of extra home loans because of this Happy Meal toy, then you scoop up the low-lying fruit pretty quick. And so therefore the general manager, I was a consultant and I would visit them once a week. And so therefore he said to me, oh, JD, look, we've picked up all the low-lying fruit. What do you think we could do next to go up a level? In other words, we get the collar and ties. And I said, you've mistaken me for David Copperfield. There's nobody with a collar and tie that's going to deal with a building society. I'm sorry, and I'm obviously exaggerating. There are some, but, And he said, okay, smart Alec, well, what do we do? I said, look, I can probably help get you to middle white collar management, but you're never going to get to, the senior executives. They're just not going to bank with a building society. He said, well, what would we do? I said, look, a mate of mine was doing a Billy Connolly campaign at the time for ING. So ING came out and Billy Connolly, the Scottish comedian. And I said to him, I rang him up and said, mate, we're thinking about doing a sports star or maybe a celebrity for the Greater Building Society, get a home loan, get a free holiday. How do you get Billy Connolly? And he said, look, wherever he is in the world, we just fly with a camera crew and we give him, $1.5 million for a day's work, and then we fly back again and that's it. So it's easy money for him. We don't have to bring him out to Australia. We go and visit him. Okay, righto. So when we put out a survey to not only building society members, but non-members, if you could think of a sports star or celebrity that would be really cheeky, that would represent the Greater in a cheeky sort of way, who would it be? Because we'd actually developed quite a cheeky personality, because we'd say, why would you bank with the bank when they don't know your number and they charge you bank fees and they give you nothing? Swap across to the Greater where they know you as we see smiling faces and the kids are looking up at the bank manager and, heavenly music, white doves. And so we really did have basically Dr. Evil versus the nice building society. So it was pretty cheeky. And anyway, the surveys came back, and number one came up with Robin Williams. Number two came up with Jerry Seinfeld. Number three was Jim Carrey. I was hoping it would be Bert Newton, or it would be someone in Australia that
Local,
would be.
yeah.
Yeah. So anyway, we went down the path of trying to get down to. He's harder to get to than the Pope, but I ended up catching up with his manager, George Shapiro. I'm a bit sarcastic, well, should I say very, and he's very sarcastic. So we hit it off. And he said, I'll put it to Jerry. I mean, obviously everything was put in writing to him. And Jerry said, yes. So I jumped in a plane and, obviously I pitched it to the Greater and they thought it was impossible. You're not going to pull this off. And I thought the same thing. I thought, well, this is stupid. We're going to end up with Bert Newton, And as it turned out, he said, yes. So the first meeting I had with him in his office in New York, I sort of said to him, mate, you've got more money than God. Why did you say yes? And he said, well, JD, two reasons. Number one, you Australians, I like your sense of humour, and you take the piss out of people all the time. And he said, that's what I do for a living. So he said, you asked me to be part of a campaign where it just took the mickey out of banks, and why not? And he said, the second reason is that if I didn't say yes, I thought you'd never bloody go away. I said to him, well, persistence beats intelligence.
Yeah, it does.
And that was it.
Definitely
And
does.
so I flew backwards and forwards for 3 years, and he lives in the Hamptons in New York. And we found a little town not far from where he lives called Cedarhurst. And so we just paid. It was a big production. We're talking 80 people on the crew to make these TV ads. So
Wow.
when it's Seinfeld, it's not a green screen. It's an IMAX theatre size green screen. So everything's Rolls Royce. And we're talking, catering trucks, and we're talking makeup artists, and it was something that I had not experienced before. It was like a movie set. And we just rebuilt the building society in an empty shop in this little country town. And so he stood outside the empty shop and did stand-up. And, of course, the stand-up always resulted in getting a home loan from the grader and getting a free holiday, And all the actors that we had would walk past him just not taking any notice. It was the Jerry Seinfeld in the main street of a little country town, and nobody gave a rat's. So it was quite funny. Yeah, and so that's what happened. We did that for 3 years, and it sent their home loans through the absolute roof. And as I said, if only I had asked for a percentage, I wouldn't have gone to Fiji. I would have bought it. I'm an idiot.
Yeah. No, I mean, when I first met you, that was how everyone would talk about you, the guy who got Seinfeld. And I mean, what has that lesson told you about leverage? Because you've leveraged the hell out of that.
Yeah. No, my mates who are, they own their own businesses and they're concreters or builders or electricians or what have you. So none of them have ever worn a tie in their lives. And so they're rough and ready. They keep on saying to me, I can't use the language. I won't insult your audience, but they use the F word. When the F are you going to stop milking the daylights out of that Seinfeld thing? I said, never. I said,
Never.
oh, I sound like Seinfeld then. Never, of course. I said, if you pull off a coup like that, I'm not a one-trick wonder. I've done a hell of a lot of stuff outside of that. But I bet you if you spoke to Steven Spielberg, he's probably still talking about Jaws, even though he's done a lot of other movies since. Of course I've milked the daylights out. In fact, on the second year that I went back to do the lads, because I had to go back quite a bit, I said to Jerry, you don't have a website. And he didn't. He didn't have a website. And he said, so? And I said, mate, can you imagine the amount of money you could make on Seinfeld caps and polo shirts and T-shirts and this, that and the other? And he had reading glasses on. He put them down at the edge of his nose, a bit like your headmaster would have at school when you've been naughty. And he said, JD, do I look like I need to sell any caps or T-shirts? Right? And I said, I'm sorry, I forgot, And because I had put him all over my website at that stage, because this was the second year of a 3-year stint, and he said to me, why would I need a website? He said, I've looked at yours. I'm on there more than you. I said, look, I'm sorry. I hope you don't mind me milking the shit out of this. But he said, no, if the roles were reversed, I'd do it as well.
Yeah. So when it comes to marketing, I heard it once said that it is essentially maths and psychology. That's really what it comes down to. And it's really about human behavior. But what do you think most marketers misunderstand about human behavior?
Yeah, I think they dropped the word emotional because, as you know, and that phrase you've just used, I remember Mel Emery used to use that all the time, maths and psychology. The full name for this direct response stuff is emotional direct response. And I think the word emotional just got left aside over the last 10 years, but it needs to be emotional. I mean, you need to make sure that you are tapping into their emotions. And if it's weight loss, then of course, it sounds exploitive, but it's the only way to do it. You've got to show a lady who might not be feeling too good and she's overweight. And then 4 weeks later, as a result of your program, she looks like a supermodel. And, we never, in the emotional angle, we never ever ask anyone to tell a fib. We always say, look, it has to be absolutely transparent. You've got to take the truth. We will say to them, if they're giving a testimonial for one of our ads, look, it'd be better if you said it this way because, they're not marketers. And so therefore they'll give the compliment to whoever the business was, but it has to be done in such a way if it's going to penetrate. But we never, ever let them, tell a fib. And so I think what a lot of marketers do is they miss out on the emotion. For example, even if it's a gurney high pressure water blaster, if you show half of the driveway that's been cleaned and the other half that's not, so it's basically, the Coke and Pepsi comparison, then that's powerful. But it's even more powerful if you've got the owner of the house standing there on the driveway going, oh my God, I can't believe it. In just 30 minutes, you've transformed my drive. That's probably going to add $10,000 to the value of my house, bang, like that. So it's the emotion, not just the photograph.
Yeah. I think emotion is one of those things that a lot of people get really in their head about, and they're just trying to focus on logic and, oh no, this is what we do. And I see it all the time in people's sites where it's just this blubber of nonsense where it's just trying to say, this is what we do and we do this and this and this. And it completely misses the mark when it comes to making people feel anything.
Well, I'm guessing you would subscribe to this, Ben. I mean, I've got dozens and dozens and dozens of video testimonials all over, my website. And they're there for a reason. These people have been kind enough to blow wind up my you-know-what, and I've captured it, and I put it on there because it is, as you know, they call it the social proof, but let's just call it proof. It is proof that you are what you say you are. Without that, then, of course, they've got to believe you. And in my instance, because I'm a baby boomer, so therefore, I'm not young anymore, I've got to make sure that if someone is in their 30s and they're looking at, they own a business and they're looking for someone to help them with marketing advice, instead of them saying, "Oh, look, that old fart, what would he know?" Then I've got to make sure that I'm up to speed with AI. I mean, we have AI, we have a division called, AI Genie. It's aigenienow.com. And, we answer the phone for restaurants. And when I say we, our robots answer the phone for restaurants and for tradies who can't get to the phone, and for real estate agents who used to put out letterbox brochures. It would take them a month just to put out 1,000 of them. We now have a robot ringing 10,000 homes in an hour. And every one of those homes, when they answer the phone, the robot says to them, in a human voice, of course, "Hello, Mr. Smith, do you know that the value of your home is $1.24 million because we've scraped the values of all the homes?" So real estate agents now are reaching 10,000 prospects that could possibly turn into an appraisal within an hour versus months. So therefore, we're up to speed with all the technology, and I've got the younger people under me that do all of that. Don't get me wrong, we're not Coca-Cola by any means, but I've got a few in the team that look after all of that. And so what I do to combat, those that might say, "Oh, what would he know?" is I show testimonials on just about every page. There's a video, not written because they think you just wrote that, and if you only had 2 or 3, then you could easily be accused, "Oh, you gave them a carton of beer. You gave them a bottle of wine," But when you've got 33, they're never going to watch all 33. But when you've got 33, then of course that proves you can't give 33 cartons of beer out for people to say nice things about it. So that again is just another example of emotional direct response marketing. I mean, we drink our own Kool-Aid. We realise that it's fine for me to get out there and wax lyrical about how good we are and blah, blah, Seinfeld and whatever else. But it's another thing altogether when you've got a lot of video testimonials from people saying, "Yeah, this is what life was like before, JD, and this is what life is like after." And I'm sure if you're getting testimonials, what you want them to say, "This is what life was like before Ben. After I met Ben, this is what life's like now, before and after."
Yeah, no, well, we use testimonials. Obviously, Google reviews is one thing, and I always say to people, you need to get your Google reviews to a point where there's pretty much an endless scroll where they can just scroll on and on and on and on. It's like, okay, yeah, that's obvious proof that they're legit.
Yeah.
And same with the videos as well, is to have a good amount of them so that, yeah, it's undeniable. Because like you said, no one's reading them. It's like testimonials. They don't read the testimonials. I often will chuck like a headline on top of a testimonial just to like, here's the,
Yeah.
the byline, just so that they know what the key thing you're trying to communicate is, because they don't want to be on your site for more than a few minutes if they don't have to. It's just, how can you, as quickly as possible, let them know essentially what you do and who you are and why they should reach out.
Yeah.
Now, you've heard you refer to the website as, the director of first impressions. When did you realize that the website became that? Because there was a point where the website overtook all the other, it used to be Yellow Pages was the go-to. Was that super obvious to you when that shift happened?
I think it happened almost as fast as AI's happened in this last 2 or 3 years. I think it was that quick. It really was. I mean, as you know, back in the early days when websites came on board, people were spending 15, 20, 25,000 on a website. You probably have heard of Steve Esser, have you? Steve Esser, the speaker?
Yeah.
Yeah. And Steve was around in that era, teaching not just webinars, but also websites. And he was just saying, "Oh my goodness, talk about the Wild West." I mean, when websites first came, I mean, you're way younger than me, but you must have remember something of that era when people were willing to pay 20 grand for a website. I guess really because it happened. Look, AI's happened faster. There's no doubt about that. It's like it's at light speed at the moment. But yeah, I mean, you could see over that 4 or 5 year period when websites came in, and these days, and tell me what your opinion is, Ben, but these days, a lot of people are reverting to having multiple landing pages rather than the traditional 5-page website. They just seem to recognise that maybe the sub-pages are not getting the traffic that they used to, and so it's better to have 5 individual landing pages. Is that fair to say?
Look, it depends on the industry. One of the things I've found is if you're going to have all those individual pages, they all need to essentially be its own landing page, because people don't browse a website, and especially if they're on a mobile, they're not clicking on the menu button. They're not, going to look for anything. You've basically got 2 clicks in them. They land, they'll scroll, they might click on something they like, they'll scroll a bit more, and it's either a call to action button or it's back.
Yeah.
It's sort of that simple these days. And it also depends on the type of industry. It's very different if you're trying to, if you're a lawn mowing company or a carpet cleaner or a landscaper, people know what they're looking for. It's just, hey, are they near me? Can they trust me? And how do I take that next step?
Yeah.
where, if you're trying to sell something that's a little bit more complex, that requires some education and, it's a very different way that you need to present yourself
Yeah,
and your
good point.
business
Yeah,
in
good
order
point.
to get that. So I've found that, like, let's say we've got a cabinet maker. He might have a kitchen renovation page. Then he may have a bathroom renovation page. Now, each of those, realistically, if they're doing their marketing right, if someone's searching for bathroom renovation, they end up landing on the bathroom renovation page. And that pretty much from top to bottom is essentially a sales page that drives them to request a quote or whatever it is.
Yep.
And then the home page really becomes almost like a menu where they go there, they scroll down, and then oh yeah, it's bathroom, it's kitchen, it's vanities, whatever it is. And that'd be how I would typically structure those sites.
Yeah. Yeah.
But yeah, I think
Good
that
point.
the idea of having those individual landing pages can work really, really well, especially when you see a lot of sites where it is that typical 5-page website and each of their service pages has one paragraph and often they're missing the call to action button.
God either blessed me or cursed me with sarcasm, and not that you do that many stage events these days because it's all webinars and like this podcast pretty much. But when I was doing, the seminars on stage and we'd have, 50, 60, 100 business owners in the room, we'd always ask for volunteers to come up for a hot seat. And then we'd bring up their website on the big screen. And of course, I would be cruel. Most of the time, I would say, "For goodness sake, who did your website? Stevie Wonder?" So anyway, as it turned out, what I would do is quickly sketch on the butcher paper next to it, which not many seminar speakers do. Because I can draw, obviously, it was a pretty safe bet. But you are throwing yourselves to the wolves because like if your layout for that homepage is not good, then you're going to cop it from 100 business owners in the room. But anyway, I took the risk, and so I would quickly put it on the butcher paper and say, "Look, this is what it probably needs to do." And of course, it had a format, just like you would have a format in terms of the panel after the panel after the panel. Say that when I asked everyone in the room how they felt about their website, and this is all good news for you because that's what you do, of course. I'd say probably 6 out of 10 would put their hand up and say, "We've got a woeful website," and you would know that better than anyone because of what you do for a living. And it's the director of first impressions. It'd be like having a receptionist in your office who swore at people, didn't wear nice clothing and didn't comb her or his hair, and they were just a mess. I mean, that's the director of first impressions, and there's no difference from, her behind the reception desk looking silly than your website looking silly.
Yeah, well, I remember seeing something very similar with the work you've done where you would do the sketches of the website, and there was something really endearing about it, the way that you would actually do it. It was sort of just done off the cuff, and it was super impressive the way that you would one make it just look really, like, for a hand-drawn picture, it always looked very neat and tidy and you could get the general gist of it. And I think as well, the fact that you could come up with the copy pretty much off the cuff was always very impressive. So, it wasn't like you would have to sit there and spend a lot of time. It would just sort of come so naturally to you.
Oh, well, thank
Is
you.
that something that has just come over time, or do you think there's a natural talent you got there?
The only reason I bent down to see whether I've got one of them, because I still do it, obviously, with AI these days. It's a lot quicker. But yeah, I will sketch something up like that and get that to AI these days. But, that sketch is done in probably 5 minutes. So therefore, I mean, that's what blows them away. I have to say that if you're a magician and then you pull back the curtain and show them how you've done it, then people are normally pretty impressed, And not many seminar speakers do it because, as I said, not many of them have got artistic skills. But I would put that together in around about 5 minutes, and the copy might take a little bit longer. Well, it used to, maybe not these days with your best friend Chad.
Yeah.
And yeah, look, that did help me. Ben, I'm showing off, but that did help me distinguish, my marketing consultancy from others because, I could, walk the walk and talk the talk. So there's a lot of others out there who would say, "Oh, you should do this, you should do that." And anyone in the audience or anyone on the webinar would say, "Okay, well, show me how you would do it." And it wasn't them. They'd have to go to one of their team who did that.
Yeah.
So being able to sort of write the copy, do the layout, come up with the headlines and add the Happy Meal toy to it all at once. I mean, we've got a thing at the moment, which is just insane. There's not too many things in my career where you've had a 100% success rate. I mean, there's been some wins, but, a lot of the times, and you would relate to this, it sounds awful to say this, but you're feeding strawberries to pigs. You will give a great idea to a business owner, but then they'll give it to their 19-year-old daughter because she does websites and then completely screw it up. And so my phrase for that, as insulting as it is, oh, God, I'm feeding strawberries to pigs. What am I doing here? Whereas if you gave that same advice to a corporate business, like a big business, they have a whole team to execute it. And the frustration, I'm sure you suffer from it as well, when you're dealing with small to medium-sized businesses, so it's probably a husband and wife or maybe 5 employees, they don't have a marketing team to execute what you've given them in terms of a plan. And this thing is called the contest leads formula. I'm not sure whether, any of the stuff that I've done, you might have seen this, but it came about because I'm on stage one day and at I was going on about how you should use Facebook and so forth. And this guy puts his hand up and comes up for a hot seat and says, look, I've inherited from my father an aluminium fence business. And he said, Facebook doesn't work. And I went, well, it may not be Facebook. And I said, let's have a look at your ad. So we bring it up on the big screen. And his ad was a picture of an aluminium fence. That was it. And boring copy that, he inherited the business from his dad, and his dad started in 1864, and he's got 3 kids, and they like to go to Disneyland. It had nothing to do with anything. It was just rubbish. And as it turned out, I said, well, the big mistake is you've just actually concentrated on features, not benefits. And he said, what do you mean? I said, well, everyone knows what an aluminium fence looks like. Your ad is just a picture of an aluminium fence. He goes, but that's what we sell. I said, no, you sell transformations. You sell wooden, crappy paling fences that are falling down to now great-looking fences. Got to do Coke, Pepsi. And he said, well, what do we do? I said, well, why don't you get out of the way and let us do it? So we ran the ugliest back fence in Australia contest on Facebook. And we said to everybody, look, take a photo of your crappy paling fence that's falling over, post it up to his Facebook page, and you have the chance to win a $5,000 makeover, aluminium fence. He spent $700 in, I think it was 4 days, and we had to shut it down. He has 6 months worth of leads, okay? They not only raised their hand and glowed in the dark and said, I need a new fence, they gave him a photo of their crappy one. It doesn't get much hotter than that. So I sat on this, being an idiot that I am, I sat on this for years. And only just about 3 or 4 months ago, we launched a new product, and it's called contestleadsformula.com.au. And basically that's it. What we do is that we say to businesses, just give away your product or service. In your instance, it would be a website design. In my instance, it would be 1 month's worth of consultancy. In a lawn mowing instance, and I'm quoting from the website here because I know all the case studies on the website, a lawn mowing guy just gave away 2 months worth of lawn mowing service. Anyone who lives in an apartment is not going to enter a contest to win lawn mowing. The pool slide guy, the good thing with the pool slide guy, we got 1,600 leads for him in the space of a few weeks, and he was spending $30 a day. That's all it is. And no one enters that if they don't have a pool. You don't want to win a pool slide if you live in an apartment. We had a dentist in Perth that said, listen, I want to sell Invisalign braces to rich parents with children who got crooked teeth. So we just put an ad out in Perth, rich suburbs, and we said, how would you like to win Invisalign braces for your child if your child's got crooked teeth? $20 a day, 1,000 leads in the first week. Like, we're not talking, like this guy wouldn't get 1,000 leads in a year. He got them in a week. And he said to me, wow, I can't keep up with it. The girl that rings, because what happened is that the girl rings the people up who didn't win. And the girl says to them, oh, listen, you entered the contest, so obviously you've got children with crooked teeth or a child with crooked teeth. Look, we've got a special deal on at the moment. And that is that if you actually end up getting Invisalign braces by the end of the month, guess what? We'll give you a free family holiday.
Yeah.
It should be illegal, but it's not. I mean, it really is Dr. Evil stuff. And so therefore we bring massive amounts of leads in by just simply giving away their product or their service as the prize. And then we deliver them with a Happy Meal toy to close those non-winners who they follow up.
Yeah. No, it actually reminds me of one, you worked with Eagle Wools alongside me a while back, and we actually ran a competition for them quite a few years ago, and it was I think it was a Mother's Day competition. It was enter to win your mum a pair of Uggs, and like the amount of leads, I think we got something like 3,000 or 4,000 leads, just a couple of weeks with very limited spend. And in order for them to enter the competition, we were asking everything. They were picking their size, they were picking their color, they were picking the type of boot, like what would you like if you actually won? So they're giving you all the information of exactly what they need and what they want. Yeah, it was just amazing on the back of that. You're building your list and you're building your business and you're building the brand, and it definitely works. And I always find those cheeky ideas, like you said, that post up the crappiest looking fence, or I actually didn't pull the trigger on it. I probably should have years ago. I got doesyourwebsitesuck.com, it's the same idea. What I do tend to find with most business owners, though, unfortunately, is a lot of people's websites suck, but they don't know it because they look okay. Do you know what I mean? It's like a good looking, it's like a cake that got
Tastes
really good
awful.
decoration, but it tastes shit.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And that's what I think a lot of websites are. They're kind of secretly poor performing, and
Yeah.
people just don't even know. So they're not
Yeah.
getting leads from it, but they look the part,
Yeah.
and it kind of checks the box of, oh yeah, that's a professional looking website.
Yeah.
Have you found that with conversion rates? Have you
Yeah,
dug into that a lot?
absolutely. I mean, the crazy part is that the most viewed videos on YouTube are cat videos. So, go figure. So it doesn't have to always look the prettiest. It can just be the silliest sometimes. And so in terms of websites, of course you want it to look nice. You don't want it to look ugly. But by the same token, you must have case study after case study after case study where it may not look BMW. It might be a level or two below that, but it sells, versus the one that looked BMW that doesn't sell. And I take your point, for you to run the contest might suck and you can win a new website. I still think it would be very successful for you. I think it'd be great. Because even in my instance, I haven't done it for about 18 months, but when we had a couple of slow months coming up, I would just drink my own Kool-Aid and we'd throw out a thing on LinkedIn mainly, not Facebook. And we'd say, how would you like to win a month, free marketing consultancy with the guy that Jerry Seinfeld trusted with his advertising, blah, blah, blah. Okay. And, we would pay $50 or $60 a lead, as opposed to that dentist in Perth it was 991 leads he got in a week, and he spent $20 a day. So for $140, he got nearly 1,000 leads. And he had his girl ring 50 of them, and then she wanted to commit suicide because it's telemarketing is not fun, right? She had a 11% hit rate in terms of selling them up to get the Invisalign braces and then the free holiday. So we put our AI robot on to ring the rest of them in the space of 3 hours, the whole 900 of them. And the robot beat her 11% conversion rate. He got 16%. And so therefore, it sounded like her, by the way. We programmed the robot to sound very, very female and very nice. But it just goes to show how far we've gone these days with AI. But yeah, I mean, you would still get good number of leads out of it. However, you are dead right. You're in an industry whereby even though they've got an ugly baby, unless someone tells them, then they won't accept it. Oh, I've got a nice looking website. The beauty of what we've got here, and the reason we're doing okay with it, is that everybody knows if they're not getting enough leads. Okay, they just know that if they look at their spreadsheet on their computer today and they got 4 leads. I mean, a lawn mowing guy called George here on the Gold Coast, he said, would it work for me? And I said, well, I think so. I said, you're going to pay more for lead, because he was only interested in 4 or 5 postcodes on the Gold Coast. And as you know how social media works, and Zuckerberg's going to charge you more for a lead if it's a small confined area, as opposed to a chocolate business that sold $250 chocolate baskets. We got leads for her because it was national. She can send her chocolate baskets anywhere in Australia. Running the contest for her to win a $250 chocolate basket, we got leads for 82 cents a lead. And,
wow.
she gets 500 leads and closes 1 in 10. She's just made a fortune. But in his instance, because he's only wanted to do the lawn mowing in 4 postcodes, he paid $5.50 a lead. Still fantastic. I pay $50 or $60 a lead for B2B, but for B2C to get $5.50 a lead is great. And he got 200 and something leads straight away. This will keep me going all year. I said, well, that's the idea. But he said, you're David Copperfield. I said, well, thank you. But it will still work for you, because all of my clients that come on board for the lead generation, they know they don't have enough leads. Whereas in your instance, a lot of them don't know they've got an ugly baby,
Yeah. Well, I tend to find they know the site's not performing. With the website, I'd be interested to know, if a website's not converting, where would be the first place that you would look?
Of course, the homepage, and has it got an Elvis found headline? And that Elvis found, because and I know, if we walked past a news agency today and had the newspaper thing outside that said Elvis found, you'd buy the paper, okay? And so therefore, if you're voted number 1 in whatever industry you're in, then that should be up the headline. That's the Elvis found headline. Or if you've got a magical solution to something, then follow that problem solution path. Just follow that process. Just say, does your driveway look dirty? We can instantly fix this within 24 hours. So that problem solution headline is always going to win. And the mistake that most people make, in my view, is that they don't have a video near the top of the homepage. And I, in a cheeky way, at the seminars that I used to do, I used to say, look, have a video near the top of the page and keep it, reasonably short. And because they just say, well, how long would it be? I said, well, if it was Robin Williams, it could run for an hour. Okay. But if you're boring, then get it over and done with in 60 minutes. And the other thing is have a good look in the mirror before you do it. If you're ugly, do not do it. All right? Get someone else to do it. All right. And these days with AI, of course, you can easily do that. They don't have to be a real human,
Yeah.
But yeah, have an explainer video up there, probably that runs for somewhere between 1 and 3 minutes. And in that video, don't do the usual wasting of time that most video editors do. For the first 10 or 15 seconds, they have the logo swinging around and there's
Yeah.
music and it's like a TV show. They're gone. They've left. They're not watching it, right? And don't fall into that trap of saying, welcome to our website. They're already there. You don't have to welcome them, right? Just get straight into it and just say to them, I know what your problem is. You're overweight at the moment. I'll be here. Well, let me tell you this. I've got the solution. Bang, 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 bang. And the reason video works is just simple. I mean, a TV ad will always work better than a radio ad. It's simple.
Yeah. If it's short, sharp, to the point, just really gets to the crux of what you're trying to say.
Yeah.
There's usually 3 places I go to immediately with a website when it comes to conversion. First of all is often people are missing the basics, like putting where you're located. You know what? If you're a Sydney business and you don't have Sydney up the top, they're not going to start reading the copy until you answer that immediate thing. So they've got to scroll to the bottom or go to the contact page to figure out where you're located. Like those little simple things are often missing on websites.
Absolutely.
And the other one is the call to actions. I tend to find people just don't put them there. It's not clear what the next call to action is. And I actually usually will put dozens of buttons on most pages. Like there's after every bit of text, there should be a call to action. And usually it'll be a couple, there'll be something like request a quote or get a quote or whatever that is. The number one button text I find is instant quote.
Yep.
Like I've seen websites literally triple their conversion rate by just changing from get a quote to instant quote.
Yep.
That one word makes such a difference. And then the other thing is we use a thing called a type form. I don't know if you've seen the single question forms, and it fights against that tendency that I see a lot of businesses do where they have what I call a answering machine web form. It's basically leave your name, number, and email, and we'll get back to you. If you're asking for a quote for some roller shutters, what am I supposed to put in there? Do you need to know how many windows I have, where they're located, what my house is made of? And so really I try to get people to shift to like they're on a phone call. So it asks those questions in a logical fashion. And I find that just adding those 3 things on a website, it's quite often will triple the conversion rate easily.
I agree, because you've started a conversation rather than just a form. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's also a little less overwhelming when you're just serving up one question at a time.
Yeah.
If you've said instant quote, they start answering those questions and they're not sure if they're getting a price without giving their details or not. But if they're 5 or 6 questions in and then you ask for their contact details, you've already wasted 2 minutes of their life. They'd be silly to leave now. You do find that actually works quite well.
And Ben, it's funny you should bring that up, because I was talking to a real estate guy yesterday and he said, JD, all I'm after is start the conversation. That's all I'm after. All I'm after is for someone who's thinking, even if it's only just remotely, of selling their home, just all I want is their details, so we start the conversation. If I start the conversation, they may not list their home with me for 12 months, but I've started and what you're saying with that form is that you're having a conversation with them. You've started the conversation.
Yeah, and there's some cool stuff you can do with, let's say it's tree stump removal. There's a completely different set of questions you ask than if you're looking for hedge trimming. So you really guide them in a way that feels very authentic.
Yeah.
And the user experience it feels like you're giving them the right information and, oh, this is great. I'm going to get a quote back. It's going to be simple. It's going to be easy. And I find that can really, really help.
Yeah, dead right. Spot on.
All right. So in the space you're in, a big part of it is making a wow impression and really sort of standing out. There's that, I guess, it's about that grand gesture. But is there a fine line between theatre versus a gimmick? And how do you walk that line?
Yeah, a very good question. The people who normally ask or normally say, oh, look, I couldn't do that, it's too much like a gimmick, are mostly left-brain thinkers. They're mostly accountants or operational people, okay? And they will find a reason not to do just about any promotion. So, I had one, we don't generally even talk to accountants because, although one of my 6 children is an accountant, so I do talk to him. Yeah, we don't, because the chances of getting a conversion with them is pretty remote. They will come up with, I mean, with our holiday program, I had an accountant one time say to me, "Can I guarantee that people will enjoy the holiday?" You've mistaken me for, God. And then the other thing is that, oh, what if they don't go on the holiday? I said, "Mate, look, let me say this to you. Okay, you're way overthinking this, but, let's close it down because it's going to go nowhere. I've got 6 children. They're all adults these days, but at one stage we had 6 under 12. We gave McDonald's $7.5 billion in Happy Meals, right, throughout that period of time. Not once did McDonald's ring us up and say, are the kids playing with the toys? They don't care whether they're playing with the toys. They just got a hamburger sold because of that. So you don't care whether they go on the holiday. If they do, great, and that's lovely, but you can't force them to go if family circumstances through illness or whatever it might be mean that they can't go. Like, get over it. And so therefore, they're the people who normally put their hand up and go, oh, it's a gimmick, The best way, though, to get over any skepticism, is it a gimmick, is just be transparent. In the instance of the holidays, we just say, listen, we've got a relationship with a travel partner in America who has access to unsold hotel rooms around the world. These hotel rooms outside of school holiday periods are running at about 30 or 40% vacancy. They know that 3 or 4 of every 10 rooms tonight are going to be vacant. They may as well give those rooms away for free under the radar. They don't want to advertise it because it takes their brand from the penthouse to the toilet real quick. But if they can give that out to businesses who hand it out as a Happy Meal toy and then people come and stay there for free, first of all, they're not identified as freebies. They look like everyone else, okay? They fill the room and not get the tariff, but then they make money out of food, beverage, massages, room service, all that sort of stuff. That's where the real profits are. And as soon as you explain that to them, they go, oh, okay, yeah, no, it's not a gimmick. It's fair. I said, yeah, the hotels win because they fill otherwise empty rooms. You win because you got the best Happy Meal toy in town, and your customer wins because they've got a pretty good gift. And so therefore, as long as you're transparent, if it sounds too good to be true, particularly with this holiday one, of course it does, then just be as transparent as you need to be to make sure that you combat skepticism.
Yeah, the transparency is a huge one, and it's such a trust builder. And I find that when you can talk to a client in that real, genuine, authentic, real way, it builds that trust. And if anything, it only increases the likelihood of them actually going ahead with it.
And you know what, though, Ben? I mean, I always say to people, look, if it gives you any stress, then don't do it. Don't do it. There'll be plenty of people out there in your same industry, lawn mowing or, bloody plumbing or electrical service, that will do it. So don't be surprised if you see your competition down the street doing it. And not that I'm ever threatening them that if you don't take it, I'm going to sell it to your opposition, because I wouldn't have a clue who their opposition is. But it's funny how that psychology ticks over in their brain. They go, okay, the last thing I want is Fred down the road doing it, But even if it's, you look at McDonald's. I mean, they've been doing that for 44 years, that toy in the Happy Meal box. Now, you can call that the gimmick of all gimmicks, because they market that in such a way that's pretty sophisticated. Then just like Kellogg's have been doing for about the same period, that is what we call in the direct response marketing game, gold medal status for Pester power marketing. In other words, mummy, daddy, I want the Happy Meal toy, right? And having 6 kids under 12 at one stage many years ago, then I know all about Pester power. I mean, I had the license to do the rugby league bubblegum cards for, a few years. And so what we used to do to build sales for that, we took the rugby league the year after we took it over from Scanlon's Bubblegum. We were marketers, they weren't. So I went to the Sunday papers and I said, look, here's 2 million cards. And the big footballer at the time was Mal Meninga, which won't mean much to anyone in Perth, but he was a big footballer at the time. So he was the Babe Ruth for rugby league, and it was his last year of playing. So therefore, we would give the Sunday papers a Mal Meninga trading card and 2 or 3 of the other players, and they'd come on TV for 3 or 4 nights before the Sunday paper and say, look, buy the paper on Sunday and you get 3 or 4 of these trading cards. It was the sampling from heaven, So we would give 2 million of these away, and a cent each, it cost me 20 grand. They'd give me $500,000 worth of TV exposure, free footy cards. And if there was not World War III, I took up most of the front page. Get your free footy cards in today's paper. Normally, they would charge Harvey Norman $75,000 to put a leaflet into the Sunday paper. Back in those days, this is when Sunday papers were big time. We got the insert of the bubblegum cards for free because the paper could see that it was going to increase circulation. And we took the revenue from 2 million to 12 million in 1 year, purely and simply because, we put some pizzazz and some pixie dust behind it. And that's something that I have to say to you is that not many people do. You're doing it here and you're doing it very well because you're talking about websites and your business's website, but hardly anyone samples. I mean, I always say to people, look, hand out the calamari outside the seafood shop, and they might taste the calamari and come in and spend a fortune on barramundi. But nobody Nobody gives sampling anymore.
Yeah. I actually, the other day I was in Brisbane and went for a walk through a food court and I was in that sort of, oh, what do I want? And it was exactly that. The guy handed me some chicken and I ordered right then and there. And I was quite impressed at that because, like you said, no one does it. So when
Yeah,
it does actually happen, it's kind of like, wow, yeah, all right, cool, yeah.
yeah,
And
yeah.
you feel like, oh yeah, that's good. It tastes good. Oh, that was nice. They gave it to me for free. I'll buy it. It sounds
Yeah.
good. So you see it in action. When you talk about memorable, I was actually talking to my brother and a mate the other night about oddbods and the Tarzos and the things that used to be in the chip packets. And
Yeah.
like, there's actually these real fond memories that I've got now. Like, very much like McDonald's has the Happy Meal toy, they've got you hooked for life. It's the same with these sort of when you're marketing to children. Is there a reason why that stopped? Do you know?
Oh, look, the digital world had a lot to do with it, but also I think what had to do with it is just the lack of imagination for the people. We did all the Tazos. We gave them to Lay's chips at the time. So,
Mm,
packets of chips, you'd open up and they were called Pogs or Tazos, and they were little round
yeah.
things. And yeah, we did okay because we had the license for AFL and for the Rugby League, but we also took out the license for every movie that was coming along. So it was Beauty and the Beast or Little Mermaid or Jurassic Park.
Mm,
We did the whole lot of them. And so any of the big, fast moving consumer goods knocked on our door to say, because you had to, you couldn't just do them yourself. If we had the license for, cardboard, then, they had to come to us. So it was like money from heaven when, Lay's potato chips knocked on your door. You went, oh, thank you, there is a God. And I think probably the introduction of digital, of course, did have an effect on it. But I do really think that the people who were making those things, well, probably without insulting millennials too much, I think what happened is the decision-making process went from people my age who have lived with pre-digital and post-digital to now the decision makers possibly being in their 30s, and they go, "Oh, a bit of cardboard? No, but you're talking about." I mean, they've never bought a newspaper, so they're not used to any of these freebies, but they think anything on a piece of paper or a piece of cardboard is so yesteryear, when it's
mhm,
not. It's not. If you walk into any of those memorabilia stores and you see, the sports stars, signing, or Paul McCartney, signing a poster, they go for gazillions of dollars. They
yeah,
won't go for gazillions of dollars if it happens to be digital. The thing is that anything that's tangible, it grows in value if it's marketed properly. And what we would do is that when we were running these things, we would make sure that we created what they call chase cards, and that would be a special lenticular card that,
yeah,
if you actually moved it, you saw Mal Meninga scoring a try. It was a little video card, we called them. It'd be much more sophisticated now, but this was still pretty good. We got Kodak to make them. I know there's no such thing as Kodak now, but Kodak made these cards for us. And these cards might cost $25, $30 a card, but we'd only put one in every 1,000 packs. Now, if
yeah,
a kid got that in his pack at the stock exchange, which was the school playground, he was like, he
yeah.
was top of the pops. So, all of that stuff is still available to be done. But you know what? I think because a lot of the decision makers are now, people in their 30s who have never been through pen and paper, but everything's digital,
Mm.
then it just doesn't happen anymore.
Yeah, I'm just surprised because I see such an opportunity there that's just not
Yeah.
being taken. Especially in something like chip packets or cereal boxes. It's like you
Yeah.
don't see it anywhere anymore. I mean, I know Coles and Woolworths have done their own little promos a bit more recently, and
Yeah. Yeah. Well, they're smart. You know what they've done? I mean, I used to be the national marketing guy for Woolworths, and I was there when, the fresh food people came about. I was not there when the fuel discounts came about, but that was very clever, the 4 cents a litre thing. And obviously it was matched eventually by Coles, but Woolworths had a window of opportunity of about 18 months, which is great for them. But they've woken up and they've decided that Pester power really works because you can say
yeah,
no to your wife, you can say no to your husband, you can't say no to your kids. That's just the way it is. So if you get them to bug the parents, then shut the gate. And that's why Disney continues to buy franchises like Marvel and all of that stuff because, they realize that pester power will force mum and dad to take them to the movies or to buy the licensed merchandise. And really, it's alive and well if you just sprinkle a dollop of creativity on the top of it. And we've got grandkids these days, and they're 3 and 4 and 5 years of age. And I'm telling you, if you give them a packet of Uno cards, they will play for hours. Now, will they
yeah,
watch TV for hours too? Of course they will, but obviously our daughter, who happens to be their
yeah,
mum, says to us as grandparents, don't let them watch TV, would you? They're quite happy to play with the picture cards. It's just that,
yeah,
as I said, a lot of the decision makers are now sort of only having lived through the digital age think, oh no, why would we do that? Well, I'll tell you why you do it, because it works like crazy if you do it properly. And if you have something like the chase cards where there is only one of a special thing in every 500 or 1,000 packs. I mean, the thing that really amazes me is baby nappy companies. If you walk down the supermarket shelf, and I've done lots of Facebook posts on this, so Huggies probably hates me, they will have the Wiggles logo on the outside, and don't quote me literally, but let's say it was Huggies. They'd have the Wiggles logo on the outside of it, but nothing inside. And I always go, oh my God, what a golden opportunity. They've paid the Wiggles the 10 or 15% for the license to put them on the outside, the Wiggles, Huggies nappies, packet of toys. Why wouldn't they put a toy or a sticker book or something inside that's a free Wiggles thing? Like, they've only half exploited the license.
Yeah. No, it's a great point. Yeah.
Yeah, it'd be like cornflakes back in the day, putting the Flintstones, and back in my day when I was a kid, putting the Flintstones or the Jetsons or Jurassic Park or whatever it is on the outside of the box, but there's no toy inside. What a tease.
Is there anything we've talked about that you want to, I guess, delve into a little bit further before we finish up?
I do a few podcasts. They ask that question at the end, what would you tell your 25-year-old self, or something like that, is the standard question. And what advice would you have for business owners? I made the mistake in my 20s and early 30s to hang around people who said why. And so they were normally, operational minded people, maybe accountancy sort of people. And every time I come up with a crazy idea, and there's been lots of them, some work, some don't, and they go, oh, why? Oh, why would you do that, JD? Oh, why? And they would just interrogate the daylights out of this thing, so therefore I just want to jump off a building, And then I woke up to myself that, that saying that you've heard, and all of us who have ever been to a seminar have heard, and that is, you are the average of the 4 or 5 people you hang around with. And so I chose not to hang around those people anymore. As much as they thought their why advice was valuable, I just thought, no, bugger it, I want to hang around people who say why not. And so therefore, I just hung around crazy people. And, you don't want them to pat you on the back if it's a stupid idea. I mean, I'm not asking for that as well. But most of the time, particularly in the world that we live in now, where you can test an idea on Facebook within 24 hours, so you don't have to put a lot of money behind it,
Yeah.
So, I would suggest to everybody, if you're an entrepreneurial business owner, then try and hang around people who say, why not? People who are going to, just encourage you to give it a shot, because you don't have to spend a lot of money these days to give it a shot. I mean, that contest formula that we talked about, we just threw $500 at Facebook for a week, and we got 2 businesses who were willing to be crash test dummies, and we said, we won't charge you for it. Just let us put your ads in for them to win your product or service. The dentist was not one of them, he paid. But we said, just get them to win your product or service. And, if it works, then you're kind enough to, on video, say that it worked. If it didn't work, well, you lost nothing. And that's what they did. They said, yep, yeah, why not? They didn't say why. They said, why not? So, my advice to any business owner, doesn't matter whether you're my age or you're younger, is that, if you really want to take your business to another level, start hanging around with the right people.
Yeah, no, great advice. If people do want to find out a little bit more about yourself, what you do, where can they learn more?
Oh, they can't, Ben. Look, I'm so wealthy, I have my own private island. And so therefore I have no contact there. No, well, you've had 6 kids, you do not have your own private island, I can tell you. Yeah, mate, look, the website is theinstituteofwow.com. And my email address is john@theinstituteofwow.com. So they're probably the best one. And if they just want to have a look at that contest thing, and the only reason I plug that is because you can swipe the idea. You don't need to have us, although, you probably don't do your own car service. Or if you've got a sore tooth, you probably don't pull it out yourself. So I would suggest that you probably would like to get someone to do it for you. But if you want to have a look at that, even with the intention to swipe it, just go to contestleadsformula.com.au, because that'll give you the entire description of how that thing works. And if you really want a shitload of leads fast, and you feel that you can even swipe it from me without using us, you got my blessing, go ahead and do it, because it's 100% success rate. I have never in my life before had anything that just works every single time. So, if you're looking for leads fast, then either swipe it or knock on our door.
Oh, beautiful. All right. Thanks for your time, JD.
My pleasure, mate. All the best.